If you ask my mom her greatest attribute, it is her intelligence. It was her greatest weapon against me, her child, with a few questions on her strategies. Growing up, my mother prided herself on her smarts and was open to proclaiming her arrogance, often bonding with my father over how they disliked stupid people, which, as I write this, totally makes me wonder their liking of me, or rather disliking of me, because of how many times they called me dumb. Yet that was the thing about my parents that shook me. You cannot be the smartest person to never get smarter, and you also cannot be wiser. My father was a criminal mastermind, and he been more bloodthirsty, could have been an exceptional serial killer, with how he left women for dead in every way except their body. To talk to him was exhausting because every word he said was a lie or a new strategy to get out of an old lie that he had been caught in, which meant a new lie. By the end of our relationship, my father thought so low of me that he no longer wanted to lie. And now, as a fledgling adult, I questioned and corrected his untruths even more. Hence why I found his declaration that he did not love me so hurtful. He did not know me beyond all the lies he told me, and all the times I told him the truth. Yet as I write that, I see why. How can you love the truth if you love to lie? My mother was a different story. If my father was always lying to me, then my mother was always telling me I lie to myself. She was my personal fact checker, consistently checking my feelings, perspectives, and overall narratives of my life to ensure I was clear about every single reason and situation. I hated it. In truth, she was questioning my sanity and my ability to absorb my environment when I was a child. It was an unnecessary and incredibly frustrating constant growing up because it embedded in me a neurosis and ungroundedness that the men in my life have really enjoyed. They can tear me down in every way, and with enough confidence and sweet verbiage, I will somehow end up believing I'm manically crazy and apologize. Yet my truth is that they were. And the danger of being surrounded by intelligent people that are unaware of themselves is that they can totally change how you see yourself. It took me a long time to realize that my parents had confused their hyperintelligence for having a godly perspective on life. Yet my frustration with them was that you cannot be unhappy or the cause of others' unhappiness if you truly are God. My dad only caused harm. My mother only saw it. And yet somehow they truly made me believe I was born unhealed. Woof! So let's discuss. Um, I think one of the biggest things, my father really manipulated my mom. And my mother, in looking back, she had some relationships, especially with men like my uncle, some of her coworkers that were her best friends, that really manipulated her. And she could be very people pleasing. I know because I am her and I'm trying to not do that. And I think, well, I am her in that way. I'm not completely her. And I think that's why I'm doing Daddy Recovery because I'm not completely my parents. And when I don't, I'm not only trying to unpack the ways I am like them, but also the ways I don't allow myself to not be like them. Like they both thought they were the smartest people on earth. And they are geniuses. And the irony is that my mother would brag about how smart I was and how technically your child, especially if you both are geniuses, is supposed to be an even bigger genius, kind of outsmart you. And my mother never let me do that. There was no outsmarting her. And it made me feel like I was paying for my father's karma because she never confronted my dad on how horrible he was. It was just all water under the bridge. And sometimes I didn't know, well, why am I drowning under the bridge? Like, why does he get water under the bridge and my head is bashing into it? Like, you're bashing me into it. Because she lived on this idea that I was, by my very nature, aloof and someone who didn't see reality and someone who just kind of invented everything. And it really, really hurt me because, and it's something that I wrote in an episode called Unruly. What I realize now in perspective is that like I said, I think I paid for my father's karma her obsessiveness with whether or not I was telling the truth while, you know, co-parenting with a man who was a pathological liar and never confronted him on that or called him out enough. I think it was that, like you are half him. So you must be half liar and I am going to make sure that doesn't develop, right? And but there were other things of like, my mother loved board games, and by she was always calling me a cheater and saying, "Oh, she loves to cheat. She loves to cheat." And when I won, "Oh, that was you were cheating. You were cheating." And it was always this kind of she gave me flaws that I didn't have and made it useless to not have them. Like if you're going to be called a cheater, then learn how to cheat. If you're going to be called a liar, then actually start lying. Like it made my genuine virtue feel useless and hopeless. And I didn't understand how she was this so astute with me, but not with others. And it's something that I spoke about in Socks and Flops with Nina. You grow up with this mom that just is consistently battling a poor friend, a poor family member, your poor dad, like just really poor, broken personalities that trap her in some type of financial, emotional, or mental issue, and then look at you like you don't see things, like you're a bad kid. And we were very good. Like, I have to say, especially now with my current group of friends, we were all nerds. We were all the good girls that studied and did theater club. We weren't rebels. That was for sure. We weren't sneaking out and doing weed at 17. Like that just wasn't us. So it's funny how strict our mothers were and our parents were. For some of us, not all of us. Some of us had really healthy relationships. And I think that triggers us even more because you think this is normal. Like I think it's normal to be consistently questioned on my mental stability. Yeah, because that's my mother, and the reason this podcast came out is that today I called my mother, and I travel a lot, and we had this huge argument. Oh, because I said I went to New York for 2 months, and she was like, "You actually went for 6." And I know it's just you have the tendency to say things, and it was a 2 week difference that suddenly I did go for 2 months, which is another thing. Then I went and checked the flights that I booked to visit her and how it was 2 months exact. And then it's like, well, evidence doesn't matter because what matters is their narrative and how they will always choose it above you. But I hated that this moment of vulnerability because I was really talking about how I felt perhaps my tendency to travel a lot and kind of really leave my home is why I don't necessarily feel I'm a part of my home or like my home is my home. That's what I was really talking about. And then it became this huge thing about how I don't know dates and I don't know facts and I gotta correct you, Deandra, because you've gotta know. And it makes me cry even now because it became this huge thing on my mental stability when I was really talking about my emotional fragility. I was really trying to be vulnerable in my feelings. And it became this huge mind warp over how I don't know time and I don't know facts. And I was right. And it makes you wonder, like, why do you feel that way about me? Why can't I just say my feelings with you without it turning into somehow me being ungrounded? And that's really painful because what I'm realizing now is that that's been my whole life. I've always been made to feel like somehow I don't see things right. And you do that to children when they actually see things very clearly. I saw my father was evil. My mother did not. or refused to. But yet she raised me as if I was some type of manifestation of that evil. Because it was my father who was deluded, and she would acknowledge it, but she wouldn't confront him on it, and she certainly wouldn't punish him for it. You know, he was the brokest man to have a new Escalade, and yet he never paid child support. And he took money from her. And yet I was this child that just loved Zara, loved it, shopping at Zara too much. And it's really hard to protect a person that not only doesn't protect you against their enemies or your enemies, but doesn't protect you against their narrative. And that's what this episode is about, this kind of feeling of, I had the smartest people who were unaware of themselves. And because they didn't want to see themselves, they hyper focused and in a way hyper invented who I was and who others were. Like, I don't think, to be honest, I will hang out with a dumb person. I don't need you to be brilliant. I need you to be kind. Like, if you are the sweetest human being that cannot count up to 3, you're cool with me. We're hanging out. Fuck it. Who needs to count up to 3? 1, 5, 7, 2. I don't care. Like, you don't need to know your numbers with me, buddy. As long as you are not numb as a human being, I love you. You know? Like, I'm down. Like, intelligence is not... I think they fooled themselves into believing a person who can have a deep conversation can have a deep relation. Because my father could hold a deep conversation better than anybody. But he will betray you. And he will scam you. And he will act like he did neither. My mother has held the deepest, most wisest conversations with all of her friends. But not with herself. And that to me is like why I mentioned you can't be... How smart are you if you're not always growing? And that's really hard for me to say that because I don't want to be unforgiving and relentless on my own mom because I love her and I think she's great. But it's really hard when you're growing as a human being and kind of realizing how you have not been set up to succeed in life, but now you're adult, so it looks just like you're schlepping and lazy and lost. You know, like I don't think my parents set me up to succeed. They were just lucky that I, by my nature, set myself up. I just was a person that got A's. And I auditioned for everything. And if I needed a scholarship, I looked for one. And if I always was looking and working and trying. And what happens with that overachiever is that they get launched into a world that will absolutely not acknowledge your achievements, not thank you for your achievements, not encourage your achievements because you're a woman, you're Latina, you're sweet, you're too smart. Like, people will come up with every excuse to make sure you lose. And the people that actually encourage you to win, they're trying to win themselves. And you can't milk them and depend on them always because they're trying to find them. And they're not villains for dedicating their life, not dedicating their life to your success. But you got to ask yourself why you haven't yet. And it's because of my childhood. It is. But now it's not pretty. Like, it doesn't look good to still blame your childhood. And I want to unpack it so that I don't blame it anymore because I actually moved on and I actually became successful and I actually loved myself. Whew, so here's to that. Here's to Daddy Recovery. Check out daddyrecovery.com on all platforms. Oh my God, I'm so annoying. Check out Deandra on all music platforms. And please follow me so you can see my vids. Love ya.